What's going on, family? Welcome to another episode of the Fatherhood Village podcast, the official home for proud fathers and mentors. I am Dale Holloway here with Kev Hick, my brother. We are your TFV hosts. Kev, what's happening, man? Talk to me.
Man, I'm chilling, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Summer's still here in Alaska,
You're not
so
supposed to be
kid.
having summers, man. I'm a little worried about that, bro.
Hey, nah, we get ours, in short spurts, but we get them, So the kids are happy, they get more
Yeah,
than one season here in Alaska, so everything's
yeah.
good. Everything's on the up and up, man. You know.
I think we've been having a really mild experience here too. So it's been like 80, 90, but then we get to 70 and a little rain. So it's been kind of balanced, man. I can't really complain about the weather or nothing, man.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of sound like you rubbing it in, but I'm happy for y'all, man. I'm glad y'all getting that.
Yeah, well, when your dark season happen, you know that y'all do that 42 days of dark, whatever the hell that is. When your dark
It's
season start.
in Anchorage, it's not really like that.
Uh,
We just get maybe at the most 18 hours of darkness, which is a lot. But we get a little
yeah, it's a lot,
daylight.
bro.
You got a few hours to get something done. But but nah. But hey, YouTubers, welcome to the show. We have another great episode on the way. We have a special guest this time. Want to give her a just do introduction. Jesse Rhea. She hails from San Francisco, California, and she's a psychiatric forensic nursing instructor. So, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be with you guys this evening.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we brought you on to talk more about what it is that you do and how you help, particularly men with their mental health issues. The types of steps working forward and battling those and winning those battles and enlighten our audience and our viewers about how significant your job, your position is, and to help a lot of men, a lot of fathers out here that really is in need for that. So this is important, man. So Kev, if you want, man, you can give a little
Mhm.
background as it is to how you two met and how you got her on the show, man.
I think like meets like, and she's very passionate about mental health, and I always attract, even in my audience and what I do in my life coaching, my dating coaching, my relationship coaching. I always meet people smarter than me, and she's one of those people who are much more brilliant than me, but needed my opinion on a
No.
few things. And so we've spoken a great deal. We've worked together for a very long time, and I think that she knows a lot about men's mental health. In particular, how men are damaged and how we carry that damage into our lives, our decisions, our relationships, and especially even our fatherhood. And so a lot of times because men don't have the outlet and it's not socially acceptable for us to express ourselves in certain ways, we find other accessory outlets. And so she's a firsthand witness to some of those accessory outlets that men use, especially working many times in the prison system, right? The penal system,
Hmm.
where these guys have
Hmm.
have fallen victim to their mental health woes and lost those battles before they were able to really shine and create opportunities for themselves to have good lives. And so it's really, really important because she's seen the result of people not managing their mental health properly. And she works very closely with those people in many of her job roles. So, without further ado, I'd just like to introduce you guys to today's special guest, and I guess let them know what you do. Let them know where your passion comes from as far as mental health and why you're so interested in making sure that people can get that together.
Well, first, thank you and foremost for such a lovely introduction, and for the compliments. I think that you're absolutely brilliant myself. I continue to learn from you all the time. So thank you. Secondly, what I try to do, is help men, specifically men. That's the population that I've drawn to because I feel like society's kind of left them at a disadvantage. Everywhere we turn, we see help for women, support for women. And not that there's not any for men, but we don't really give them the support to ask for the support. Aggression is much more well tolerated in the male community. Shutting down, being a man, handle it yourself. And that's created a lot of conflict, internal and external. So in my experience, which is just, what I aim to share, I've worked in the psych field and as a nurse, and I've worked in the areas of, acute trauma, rehab trauma, psych, and forensics. And so the way this applies to today is, we all have a monster or an ego, right? For me, I don't like to label it as wicked or evil. I like to look at it as kind of like the wounded child, right? We all have that inner kid in us. We all have our issues. It's not to blame. It's all about controlling that. So what I've seen in a lot of these settings is a lot of females will get the help that they can to control and heal that inner child, and men don't. So that looks like, acting out in the form of, a lot of self-destruction. When I worked at the rehab hospital, a lot of aggression, attempted suicide, attempted homicide, gang, gunshots. Men trying to cope with the stressors of society. Starting off majorly from trauma, unmet needs, depression, and then as it gets worse, you see it acted out in bigger ways, right? Which leads to the penal system, the Department of Corrections, and then eventually forensics if you don't get the help you need and it gets too far. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. I guess I just like to ask you then, with that being said, what are the major unmet needs that you see men suffer from that gets them, like you said, to the forensic level? Like what has happened? What has gone wrong? What are some of the things that can go wrong to start to trigger that chain of events?
That's a really fantastic question. Number one. Number two, it's multifaceted. It has a couple of answers. One is trauma. Now, usually when I say that, people will say, well, what if he wasn't beaten as a kid? What if he wasn't molested as a kid? Well, he's not a refugee. When you actually look at the definition of trauma and how it applies to specifically male men in this situation, it is really defined as anything that makes you question yourself and your ability to function and move forward. So you can think about what has happened in a man's life that makes him question himself, his masculinity, the shame that comes up, the guilt that comes up. Why is substance abuse so prevalent? Substance abuse actually numbs the shame and the guilt centers of the brain. So many of us are struggling with that, and men are just supposed to just, stick through it. And so again, when I say trauma, I'm referring to, was mom present? Was mom abusive? Was mom violent? Was dad present? Was dad abusive? Was dad violent? A lot of us are referred to the fatherless generation, the Peter Pan syndrome, a lot of missing fathers. I'm
sorry. Every time somebody say Peter Pan syndrome, I imagine a grown ass man dressed like that. So my bad.
No, that's okay.
You.
It's okay.
I'm not a perfect person.
It's a good metaphor, right? And so, we're looking at how that leads to faulty ways to get needs met, right? So the answer to the first part of your question is trauma, which we defined, which leads to unmet needs. Because if you have a history of trauma and you haven't resolved it, then you're making crappy plans as a man, right? So you're not really getting your needs met, and then you don't know how to get those needs met. So you keep making more poor decisions, which leads to depression, anger, rage, failed relationships, and then eventually desperate attempts that we see, suicide, homicide, theft, things like that.
And I know Nashar probably got some questions too, but you mentioned failed relationships. I think that's a huge one. In my profession, and if you can call it that, I witnessed the result of a man's trauma as implicated in all of the decisions he makes in these failed relationships, and the women who then absorb the trauma in third person
Right.
and then become the traumatic effect of
Hmm.
his trauma. So for me, what are some of the manifestations of that trauma as it pertains to how a man might approach fatherhood, or how a man might approach a marriage or a relationship? What are some of the things that you've seen and witnessed in your profession and in your career, that we could even look for in ourselves, and some things that we can check ourselves about? Because it starts small, but those things ultimately snowball. If I have unmet needs, if I have trauma, if I have these ills in my life, how could I affect my family in a negative way, perpetuating yet another cycle of trauma in someone else, not even knowing it?
Well, okay, that's another great question. So the first thing that's important to understand, at least in my experience, is children don't have the ability to understand, oh, this is his issue, it's not mine. This is daddy's
Mm,
issue, it's not mine. This is mommy's issue. So what we do as kids is we say, oh my God, it must be my fault. You internalize everything. So there's an early onset of shame and guilt, and it's already my fault. So you already have that pathway laid. Two, it also depends on, was mom present? How was she
mm,
present? Was mom checked out? Can I bond with mom? Was I able to bond with mom? So if I'm a man, or I'm a boy and I'm growing up and I'm able to bond with my mother, and she shows me a successful bond, i.e., she shows me women are safe. I can come to mom with my issues. I can come cry to mom. I can come laugh with mom. Mom can hug me. I can form a safe bond. Then I learn to be attracted to safe women. I learned that
mm.
love is showing emotion in a safe way. I learn it in a healthy way, right?
Yeah.
Let's say mom is super struggling. Okay. Mom is choosing men that are abusive because of her history. Again, we're not going down blame here. We're going down explanation, not excuse. So let's say mom's
Mhm,
choosing poor men. Mom's not available. I can't bond to mom. Mom's not safe. So I learn to be aroused by dysfunction. I learn
mm,
to be turned on by dysfunction, because your relationship with your opposite sex, your significant other, being a straight male, is set up by your relationship or bond with that mother, right?
mm,
So if it's healthy, hallelujah, let's celebrate. Because as I get older, it doesn't mean I'm not going to have problems with women, but I'm not going to be stirring chaos. I'm not going to be starting drama. I'm not going to be, as emotionally, physically abusive as I wouldn't be.
mhm,
Um, if it is dysfunctional, I will seek to act it out over and over again with my significant other.
mm,
Because not because I'm just trying to be vindictive, not because I'm trying to be a pain, or I'm trying to be difficult, which is how women can read it, right? And then
right,
their defense mechanisms start in, and then we have a big crap show, right?
right,
But the reason
right.
I'm doing this as a man is because I learned along the way women aren't safe. So I can't be vulnerable with you. It's not that I don't want to, but I
Mhm,
can't be vulnerable. I can't bring my issues to you. Now, can that change? Absolutely. Can that
mm,
person form healthy relationships? Absolutely. But that's what it looks like. That's the presentation it has in the beginning,
mm.
when there's no healthy interference. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So let's look at the father side. So let's say dad's not present, okay? Or dad is present and he's either emotionally absent, maybe physically abusive, mentally abusive, right? A woman really can't teach a man how to be a man. You guys would know better than me, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. That's not a thing. It can be done, but it's not to be done, and it can't be done as well as a man can do it, unfortunately. So,
Right. And a lot of single mothers feel inept, and they just don't understand that void is there by a man, that father figure has to fill it. So let's say the father figure is not there. How does this man learn to become a man? How does this man learn what leading is? How does this man learn what, protecting, providing is? A woman can do a good job of that to a certain extent, but the man is absent. So what that can manifest as, in if the father was lacking, is a man's inability to make a plan, okay, with a female in a relationship, a man's inability to step up and believe in himself and know that he can do it. So the
Yeah.
woman is thinking, oh, he doesn't want me, like I'm doing something wrong, or maybe if I just did this, when in reality, it's literally because that inner child doesn't know how. He needs help. Now, if dad is present, hallelujah, let's celebrate. You'll see a man that can make a plan, can step up, believe in himself when he falls down or shit hits the fan. That little boy is able to say, hey, you know what? That sucked. I got this. Keep moving. He's able to lead his son. But when the man is not present, there has to be some sort of help or support to run interference in order for that to develop.
Right. I think I'm a beneficiary of that exact concept because my father wasn't. I've never looked at my father's face. Right. All
Oh,
I know is I
wow.
look just like him. I look just like him. Like as strangers have approached me and be like, "Hey, Rem is your dad, isn't he?" Like that's what they tell me, dude. I don't know him.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
That's how much I look like my dad. But I can say, while he was out, and I was watching my mom, who had a very traumatic, upbringing, childhood, first marriage. I mean, she's experienced everything. I watched her. I can say that even though I didn't have my father, I did have my brothers, and my brothers were so much older than me that they stepped in, and I watched them for leadership. I watched them for masculinity. I watched them
Yeah,
for manhood.
perfect.
And they were
Mhm.
7, 9, and 12 years older than me. So to me, they felt like adults. I thought, when you're a kid, everybody 4 years older than you feels like an adult. So
True.
and they were. I mean, they were living on their own. But when my shoes had holes in them, and my mom couldn't afford to buy me shoes, my big brother told me, "Hey, man, you call me if you need some shoes." And I seen that, and that made me more dependable because in hindsight, I wanted to be just like my brothers. My brothers handled shit when they needed to be handled, so I became that type of man because I admired it. I had to see it. Most people would see that from their fathers, but I saw it from my brothers. So I was fortunate in that way that I had three big brothers to look up to instead of one father. And so my trauma may have been averted because of that, but there's far too many people who didn't get that opportunity, who didn't have big brothers, who either had the wherewithal, the awareness, the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, or the ability to show them the leadership that was lacking from their father. So that's a really great point because I can attest to that being very true.
No, I'm so glad you had them. That helps me understand why you're such a strong male figure too. And you can see how men who don't have that, you can see how in relationships, women can perceive it as he's just stopped trying. He doesn't care. He won't respond. He won't even talk. He goes into the cave like he's given up. He's cheating. When in reality, that man is literally frozen. He has no
Mm-hmm.
clue how to proceed. So it's a whole lot easier to be like, I don't want to hear her mouth. I want to come home. I want to smoke a joint. Maybe I'll just, play on some Instagram, like these pictures. I don't want to deal with it, call it a day. Because he'd have to believe in himself, which he can't do. And then two, he'd have to make a plan, which he's terrified to do because he doesn't know how to do it.
Mm.
Gotcha.
That's right there.
So one question I had was how does the referral system work? So I guess another half of that question would be how are men typically or most commonly funneled to you? Is it by phone call? Is it by self admission? Is it other agencies?
For
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was pretty much the end of the
That was
question.
it?
Like how do they find you? Because I kind of wanted to lead into what are some of the best ways to help encourage men to be more emotionally available for help, where to find these resources and agencies that can get them the right help or refer them to the right professional.
Okay, so to your first question, I work for the state.
Okay.
So by the time I see any of like inmates that I've worked with or patients, they've gone through the system and they've been through the system for a while.
Okay.
And I personally don't believe that anyone's a lost cause. I'm a very humanistic person. Um, that may be too optimistic, but I truly believe that no matter how old somebody is, if they really want to change, It may be a little harder, but they can. But by the time that I see them, they've been through the system. And the only thing that makes them different, again, is that they're not wicked or evil or must be destroyed or they've done, such horrendous things. It's that these individuals have functioned with either not enough support, not letting people help them, which is a huge one, right? Serious substance abuse issues. That's what we see, especially right now, because everybody's stressed out of their mind, right? COVID, jobs, relationships, people are stuck home with each other because they're not working, children. So these people have been pushed to the brink where they've just reached their threshold. So whether it's crime after crime, a lifetime of drug use, no support, but my point is that it doesn't have to get there. There are these baby steps where when, men are to the point with their spouse where they're so disconnected, they can't connect with them. They can't connect with anybody from work. Maybe, they just want to smoke weed all day, drink when they get home. It's literally just surviving and not thriving. And no one wants to live like that. There's no fulfillment, there's no fulfillment in jerking off to porn every other night. I think any man would tell you that. There's temporal pleasure. You don't have to deal with the woman's mouth sitting next to you. You don't have to fight and argue. But are you truly happy? Probably not. There's not a lot of connection with children. So there's the second answer to your question is there are ways to get help with that. I'm a huge advocate, and it's not really sought after in the male community of, any form of counseling, therapy, counseling, support groups. And then if you are in a relationship with your significant other, whether it be marital counseling or just even a dating coach, communication counseling. I think men are also, as women are sometimes, you hear a lot, they're scared to go because they don't want to be diagnosed.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't diagnose. That's out of my scope. But two, diagnosis is not needed. It's just simply the removal of the fears, facing the fears, what's going on, talking about it, which is not, again, supported in the male community.
The word diagnosis, immediately when you said that, the word weak flashed into my mind, right? Because even though I like to believe that I'm a man who's evolved, and it's all bullshit. Like we all have something, right? And I acknowledge that even in myself. Like I laugh as soon as we say Peter Pan syndrome. I'm like, I think that's funny as hell. But I've known men that were in that stage, and when I see them, I laugh because I imagine them literally dressed like that old ass Peter Pan on that Hook movie. Remember when he went back into Robin Williams and he was acting like Peter Pan? And I'm like, that's how it. But like for me, immediately when you say they don't want to be diagnosed, the word weak just flashes into my mind. Right. Subconsciously, I'm not even present with that thought. It's just weak. And I'm not saying, I don't believe in my conscious mind that a man is weak for being diagnosed, but the weakness is the fear. The fear is that you'll diagnose me with weakness. Right. And no man wants to feel that way, because when you give me a diagnosis, now I'm stuck with that. Oh man, I come down with weak. They diagnosed me with weak ass man. I don't know what to do now. I guess I'm as worthless as I believed I was in my heart. I guess I become the fear of myself, right? And that no one wants that to be confirmed by anybody. Everyone has insecurities, but no one wants their insecurities confirmed in a medical statement. So men run like hell away from doctors and people who can give them the psychiatric or mental health they need, because they don't want their fears and their anxieties about themselves confirmed. And to a bigger degree, it happens with men because, again, society makes a room for a woman's vulnerability. It's expected to a degree, in a larger sense than it would ever even be accepted for a man to openly have a weak moment, or openly be in the weak phase of his life, be in a weakened place. So that's a very, very interesting point, because immediately, even in my, awareness of these things, my subconscious mind was like, weak. Can you get diagnosed with that shit? Fuck that. So yeah, I think, and you know what we should do before we air this, we'll drop a link in the list of all of the different types of mental health help and
Yes.
resources for men. That way,
Yes.
when they come watch
Yeah.
the video and they come listen to the podcast, whatever resources, especially on the national level, that could link them into their networks, because there's networks in Ohio, there's networks in, even
Yes.
Alaska, there's networks in
Hmm.
California, but those networks may be local, but there's also a national network that can plug you into wherever you have to go. In that way, it doesn't just limit itself to Jesse's network or whoever else's network. So let's do that.
Right.
There's one more thing I wanted to add to that too. That the ways outside of that, I think there's two things. One, in relationships, I don't think, and you guys are men, you can, correct me if I'm wrong. Men are not taught that their needs matter in a relationship. If I hear that term, happy wife, happy life, one more time, I hate that term, because
Right.
it teaches men to sacrifice. It teaches men to just give her what she wants, so I don't got to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll do my part. I can get this or get that. It's like, it makes a relationship a business exchange, because that's a lot of the bullshit that men have been fed. Look at Disney movies, look at the love stories. So I think one of the things is men learning, number one, to make a plan, but make a plan also that includes their needs. How many times have you heard a man, tell his woman, say, hey, I want to do this or blah, blah, blah. The man immediately, without even thinking, will be like, all right, fine. This time at this day, like you said, not even thinking, wait, I was supposed to play golf. I was supposed to watch a game with the boys, but whatever, so
Fuck it.
right, exactly. That's gotta go, because that sacrifice, you keep sacrificing like that. No man's going to keep an erection long term if they keep doing that for a woman, because it's going to be towards the end, it's going to be, I've done this for her. I've done this for her. I've done this for her. And then the woman's like, damn, he don't want to have sex anymore. He's not attracted to me. It's got nothing to do with that. Things get mixed up, and it's because he keeps sacrificing. Right.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very important point. A man's self-neglect is often romanticized in society
Right.
and in media.
Exactly.
And throughout our whole lives, women are conditioned to be married, to be a princess, to be exalted. And men are conditioned to self-sacrifice or neglect themselves and abandon their own needs. And that makes it manhood, right? The endurance, the long suffering, that makes it mighty, that makes it manhood. And I know I suffer from that myself. You know, kids, wife, like everybody will get
It's a
it
lot.
before
It's
I
a lot
get
to
it.
balance. Yeah.
It's a lot to balance.
And that balance looks different for everyone. You know what I mean? It's not really, a cookie cutter type of situation. It's gonna
Correct.
look different depending on, whose life it is. So yeah.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
uh, you know, you, Deshar, and me, we pride ourselves on being great men, right? And Deshar is one of the greatest men I've ever known, right?
Appreciate you.
And
Likewise, brother.
man, love you. And even with Deshar being as great as he is, Deshar has fears about passing whatever weakness in him whatever lives in him into his kids through his own trauma and not managing his shit. And I have the same fears. Every day I second guess or double check or just try to figure out if I'm not giving my son some handicap that he's gonna have to overcome in time, right? We didn't get to the forensic level, so I never meet you in the field, and I am glad I would never ever meet your ass in the field.
No, you don't want to.
If I met you in the field, somebody has thrown shit at me, or I'm about to throw shit at somebody. Like, it'd be different where you coming from. So but just because I'm not, in a broken phase of my life, or because we thrive as men, Deshar is an Air Force, active Air Force, man of honor. And I
Thank you
like
for
to,
serving.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
and I like to pride myself on being the greatest person ever for a plethora of different reasons. I'm up my own ass. Even so,
As you
I
should be
want
sometimes.
Yeah.
I want my sons to be great. I want my sons to be great and only have to overcome their own natural shit. Right? Nature versus nurture, right? Half of what you are is nature, half of what you are was nurtured into you or
Right.
poisoned into you. I just want him to deal with his own shit. I don't want him to have to sort out mine. So, um, what are some things that the guy can do to just make sure that, if he feels like he's a-okay, if he, is out of the red zone or prison system, or, his credit's okay, his job's okay, he makes good enough money, what are just some habits, patterns, and practices, some behavioral shit that he can do to just make sure that he's either not pouring whatever is in him onto someone else, or what are some self checks that we can do? And I'm not even sure if that's a thing. I'm
No,
always
it
worried
is.
about not double checking my own shit, and then my son be like, yeah, man, when I was a little kid, my dad did this, and that's why I'm fucked up. Like, I don't want that. Right? That's a
Well,
fear. Some
Mhm.
I think the first part is understanding that none of us are, perfect. You're human. So as a dad, you're going to screw up. So I think to have that acceptance is key. Number two, uh, my experience, the greatest way, especially when it comes to your sons, to make sure that, they really only have to deal with the majority of their stuff is quite simple. And to making sure as a father, your own needs are met. Because
Mm,
children are innately groomed to, what is the word, pick up on, intuitively know when their parent is struggling, and just jump in and fill that void. That happens in utero. Babies will sense where the mother is sick and send out stem cells. It's the same thing when they are in human form in children. If your son senses daddy's not happy for X, Y, and Z, he's not going to know why, but he's going to be extra tentative to you. He is going to be extra on top of you and not so much into his own needs and what he's doing. Does that make sense?
mm.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
the
think
more that, go ahead.
well, continue. Now that, you're onto something, but you just confirmed
Um,
something that's very common.
Very much so. So two things happen. One, if you are in, and it also is sad because people a lot of times don't have the motivation to get their needs met because they don't feel on some level that they should, or they're good enough, or they're not consistent, right? But when they find
Hmm.
out that their child is failing in school, or their child's struggling, and then they find out later it's because that child is so hyper focused on that parent because that parent's struggling, and that child has kicked in almost codependent to take care of the parent, then the parent's like, oh God, I need to remedy that. And again, it's not
Hmm.
about blame, it's about awareness. But I bring that back
Yeah.
to, if as a man, you're getting your own needs met, which makes you step up into your own power, which makes you make a plan, which makes you take care of yourself, you free up your son. Your son is free now
Mhm.
to go play and be your son. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, yeah. He creates emotional space for himself
Yeah.
by not needing to fill gaps and use energy for me or whoever his father might be. I think that is dope. I think,
Yeah.
and you confirmed a very interesting occurrence that happens in my house. And, not too often, but it does happen every once in a while. If I'm a little tired, I'm a little run down. And this has just been a season for that. We just sold a house, we're building a house. Everything's the basement is completely done and plumbed, and now we're just waiting for framing. But I did a lot of renovation work on the house we just sold, and that was like a month and a half, 2 months of just me working my ass off, you know, burning a candle at every end, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my son started doing this thing where I would come in the house, and he always just gives me a lot of love and a lot of support. As soon as I hit the door, hey, daddy, daddy. He always runs across the room. He's always happy to see me. Always hug him, pick him up. He's getting so damn big that's becoming more and more difficult. And I haven't
Mhm.
worked out since COVID, so picking his ass up is a little bit more challenging than it used to be. And so I
Mm-hmm.
need to put my muscles back on. I'm going to the gym tomorrow. I almost cut this weak man shit out, but more toxic
Yeah.
programming.
No, it's okay.
but so but my son, he when he sees that I'm particularly run down, he'll come up and he'll say, dad, and he's 7, and he just turned 7 a couple weeks ago. He say, I'm really proud of you. And he's
Mm.
he's 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 mirroring me because I tell him every day. I make sure I don't link, who he is or what he believes about himself to him being good at something. I acknowledge when he's good at stuff, but I always let him know, hey, good or bad, daddy loves you. I'm always proud. You could have
Mm.
sucked today.
Yeah, that's so
I,
cool.
You know, it's okay to cry. It's not okay to quit. I don't care if you suck at something. I just don't want you to quit on yourself. You know, you all right. I give him that. So he uses my verbiage, but he comes up to me. He says, "Dad, you know, I'm really proud of you." And I always, when I tell him I'm proud of him, I list why, right, as positive reinforcement to acknowledge the things he's doing. I would say, well, yeah, I'm proud of you. You were a very good big brother today. You listened to mommy. You did this, this, and this. I'm really proud of you, and you're just a great son. And I'm always proud to have you around, and I love you. And he said, oh, you know, he thank you. And usually he'll either stop and mirror me and give me something back, or randomly he'll do this. Like when I'm particularly run down, I'm taking too long for this story. He'll come up and he'll say, Daddy, I'm really proud of you. And
Aw.
he's still in speech therapy, so he mixes his words around sometimes, which makes it even cuter. But he says, "You've been working really hard to get us a house and to get mommy a house and me and Riley our own rooms because he has a shared room with his brother now in our
Wow.
temporary." And he lists all the things that I work for, like every day. These are the things that I'm building a legacy on, and he lists these things. And I don't know how he intuitively goes right to these things that are my whole legacy being built in front of me. And it's like he goes right to those things and he acknowledges those things. Like if another guy was like, hey, you know what a man really needs to hear? He needs to hear these 10 things. He'll say every one of those. And it's all and it's usually just about the man shit that I do that most of the time
Mhm.
is not really looked at, or maybe even not acknowledged sometimes. In most homes, it's easy to go around our gender roles or our
Yes.
relationship roles in the home, not even our household roles, not even our gender
Mhm.
roles. But he always acknowledges our home roles. He does that with his mom too. I'm really
That's
thankful that you cooked
cute.
me. I'm really thankful that you cooked me food today, mommy. Blah blah blah. But when he tells me about how he's grateful that I'm buying him a house and all this stuff, it's just like it's really touching. But I don't want him to have to feel like, oh, I got to lift daddy up, right? So while I'm proud of it, it does kind of like, oh, I gotta shake that shit off. I can't be in here looking like I obviously need that. I want him to feel. I want to feel mighty, and I want to feel like I'm good. And I think that he's mirroring me because we are very affectionate in his house. We love a lot. We kiss a lot. We
He's
hug a
very in
lot, and
tune
we
to you.
Yeah.
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 yeah. And he's being what he's received, but also I don't
Mhm.
want to steal his energy. I want him to just focus on his own shit. Now I will say he has a lot of space to share because he plays some pretty bullshit kid games. Hello Neighbor, that's a stupid ass game. Um, and he's some stupid shit out here for kids. So he could be doing other shit that's less valuable, but I don't want him to still be giving the value and the energy that he has and making sure that I'm fine because he worries about me, because that was my childhood, worrying about my mom. So I don't, obviously we're worlds apart from that. But that's a very good point that you mentioned about just taking the pressure off yourself by feeding your own needs so that your kids don't intrinsically and empathically try to fill those voids and take on that responsibility, stealing from themselves. Amazing point.
Well, for him to be even, regurgitating that to you is really cool. It speaks to your like phenomenal parenting, to be honest. So I would feel good about
Yeah.
that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But the point that I really want to drive with people is, it really gives people a motivation to get their needs met, because we're all real big on, I just got home, I'm not going to do it. Like I can get that massage next week, or I can put that money towards the car, like. And I think, again, men are really big at doing that. But when you break it down to what and who is going to be affected if I don't get my needs met, then there's a greater motivation to not put your
Right.
needs on the back burner.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think just real quick, Kev. Say
Are you
Kev.
good?
Kev. So I think at the same time we have to be realistic with um, how we balance our emotions, because that's
Mhm.
the humanistic side. We have to make sure that's exemplified at the same time to our youth, our children, that hey, we go through some struggles.
Mhm. Great
Daddy
point.
goes through a
Absolutely.
lot to provide for you. No, I'm willing to and willing and able. There's some things that I still have to consequently deal with. And I think
Mhm.
at this very impressionable stage in their life, I think we can, filter some of that and let them know, like, hey, daddy's tired. I had to woo, 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 but tomorrow I'm gonna make sure we do A, B, and C.
Mhm.
or if you see that mommy's going through something, hey, let's try to do this for mommy or whatever. So he can kind of see the symptoms and the signs and like, okay, how can we counteract that? How can we, move forward and put a smile on mommy or daddy's face, or, because they see what you do for them. It's like, okay, all right, let me return that. And my kids do the same thing. They try to surprise me with things, know that my, interests are here and there, and or they draw a picture because they know I'm an artist. Look, daddy, look what I draw, and stuff like that. So I think if we keep that circle going, like I said, it's our time is coming when things just come to a screeching halt, and we like, oh my God, but like you said, you don't want to feel as though you need the help. You're just trying to figure it out yourself, because as men, that's what we do. We try to find the solution, and like, all right, let me try this way, and and sometimes we try to reinvent the wheel when honestly sometimes if just making a phone call to someone like yourself, Jesse, and just like I said, getting some confirmation, getting just venting out some things that have been on your mind. And like I said, maybe sometimes you want to keep things private. Maybe you had a discussion with the wife and that didn't go as well as I thought it would. Let me have something, or at least let the wife know, hey, let me, get some help over here. Let me see what kind of game plan I can form over here to kind of better assert myself in the home. Because like I said, there's so many things pull at us, like at work, things that we see on the news, the whole COVID situation. So but yeah, I just want to wrap up with what I was saying with that, and letting the kids know that it's challenging, it's difficulty, and then let them know, hey, when you have trouble at school, or you can't figure this homework stuff out, what I'm saying, let them know how we could better kind of damage control, because sometimes they shut down just like we. I mean, it's human, what I'm saying? It's like we do. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
That's a really good point. I think because our kids, Dayshar has very young kids too. I think what you 5 and 3 or 5 and 4?
Yeah, so Sade will be 6 in a couple weeks, and then my son, he's 3. He'll be 4 in November.
Oh, cute.
So like everything is an opportunity and a teachable moment. And while you don't want to force everything, to be a teachable moment, you want to, give them that space to just develop. And but you still want to take advantage of the opportunity to build this emotional intelligence. So it is about a fine balance. There's this quote, and I say this quote a lot. Excuse me. Weak men create hard times create strong men create easy times, and easy times create weak men.
Wow,
So that's so scary, because I'm a strong man. Dayshar's a strong man. My friend Jesse White, he's a strong man, and we have to allow challenge to happen, but we don't want the challenge to be to overcome our bullshit. We want the challenge to be the shit that would naturally occur in our sons as they grow into men, to conquer themselves and be the biggest, best, strongest version of themselves. So it's like, sometimes we can sterilize our environment by trying too hard, and not see, especially when we're neglecting ourselves. We sterilize his environment, creating a weaker man, and then we create a more miserable experience for ourselves with the neglect, right? Like, so too damage can be done. I think being hypersensitive in either way, but I think this has just been a very valuable conversation. I appreciate you for showing up and giving us some game today.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Lastly, when you talked about, you use the term weak man a lot, which lets me think, that goes through a lot of men's minds. And that's, I think, the basis for so many of the superhero movies, just to be, greater than human, when that's one of the biggest things I think that is, men struggle with these days, is the responsibility of sexuality these days. Like, what does that look like, especially with such strong women? What does leading, protecting, providing, like, what does that look like? But the reason I'm saying this is to piggyback off what you said, is it looks exactly like what you guys are doing. It's effort, it's trying. Like, you look at the superhero videos, the movies, look, it's perseverance, it's grit, it's tenacity, it's showing up, it's making a plan. If your plan sucks and you lose one of your 18 lives, or you lose your armor, or you shape shift into something else, cool, you keep moving. That's masculinity. So masculinity these days, a lot of people think, is, I used to too, for a longest time, aggression, starting fights, whooping somebody's ass, being the alpha male, when really the alpha is like what you're doing with your son. You're teaching, there's effort, you're showing up. He's mirroring you. When you talk to your significant other or your wife and she brings her needs to you, a lot of men will shut down. They'll see a woman bringing their needs to them as bitching, being needy, clingy, and a woman will feel shame and she'll shut down. So you've seen that dance, or probably maybe lived it a few times, right? So it's looking at masculinity as in not being the head of the household and shutting her down, but learning to translate a woman's needs, or what is she saying when she comes to you and she's bitching, maybe she's mad, maybe she's brought something to you 15 times. It's learning to translate, what is she saying. So the last part that I bring up that I think is so super important is how to step out of the male guilt. You guys know what I'm talking about? The male guilt that shuts you down and makes you completely immobile and just stop trying.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, can you be responsible and accountable and lose the guilt? That's the goal.
Gotcha.
Shit, I think I try to outwork the guilt. So far I'm good. I'm in front of that bitch. I'm looking back at that guilt. So I ain't got nothing to feel guilty for. I think as long as, I'm just 100% dedicated to being everything that, I can be for my family. But I also understand that this is my time too. Right. And I think that that's what's missed. And that's that's that guilt. When you stop, when you forget that this is also your life, right? Like, I'm not dead just raising a son. I'm Kev. Like, Kev, I got years out here.
Exactly.
I'm still gonna be hot shit out here for at least the next 25 years. So, I still have to be everything that I want it to be. And I can't lose sight of that. And I think that too often, the guilt causes us to shut everything that we thought we wanted to be down, and we be what is needed of us. So we be what is expected of us. And, that might be a completely different individual. So that's definitely something I've been aware of. And I think that me and even Deshar had talked about that a while ago. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. One question for you, Jesse, probably just to wrap things up. What helps motivate you? Because you getting up every day doing this day in and day out. Like, what helps reinvigorate you? After sometimes, taking such a toll can wear on you and make things difficult. And then sometimes problems that are given to you, and how do you keep that kind of either at work or compartmentalize that without, like I said, attacking other folks and projecting things on others and things of that nature? How do you deal with that?
That's a really beautiful question. Thank you. I have my moments where sometimes I do it right and sometimes I don't. So the way that I try to deal with it is I hold myself accountable. I have I stay in therapy. I have people to help keep me accountable. Kevin's great at help keeping me accountable. And then, I try to keep my purpose in check. I wake up every day. Am I doing what I love? Am I getting my needs met? Am I helping the totality of the people that I've, devoted my life to? How am I suiting up? How am I showing up? So I really try to, again, wake up every day, look at my purpose. And I think it's twofold. Whenever we work with other humans, I think it's an exchange. I don't always see it as me going to work to just specifically help them. There's been plenty of days where that's been reciprocated. They've turned around and given me guidance, whether it was solicited or not, or they've given me wisdom. because it's an exchange between two human beings. So that's what I try to look at it as. And then the days where, the times I don't get my needs met, and me personally, if I overwork, or if I, my personal hell is I can run anxious, and I'll blame myself. I'll internalize something, whether it be something gone wrong with a man, or something gone wrong. I think I didn't do enough for a certain patient or family member. I'll bring it to someone and try to hold myself accountable, and fix it. So it's more of a matter of the days I do it right. I celebrate the connection. The days that I don't get it right, I try to leave the guilt at the door and just suit up, stand up. Do I need to apologize to somebody? Apologize, accept accountability. Do I need to change something, go a different direction, get the support I need to change and go a different direction? So that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. And you just brought an idea to me by explaining that is a support system. I don't think enough of us have like a fortified support system that can reinforce a lot of things, like you said, accountability. Someone to call you out on your bullshit, like, "Hey, dog, nah, that you wrong." Oh, dang, like for real? Yeah, that was wrong. Obviously trustworthy people, and
Right.
and also those that they're in your corner for help, encouragement, real support. Guidance. And also people that just put a smile on your face, for you to feel good, for you to feel happy, laugh with, because we need all those things. And sometimes at home, it's not always that season, so, just having, several different outlets for everybody in the home, you know what I mean? It's definitely important, but obviously more exclusively for men in this conversation. But yeah,
You
absolutely.
actually sum that up beautifully, because if I could say, but the one major point from this, anybody takes from this, is you have to have support. Women have a lot of support. They have access to support. Men, I don't think, are really taught to utilize it, or what it even looks like. But it's not an option. It's a requirement. And one of my favorite things Tupac said is, people who were raised on survival see the world differently than people who are raised on love.
Absolutely.
So I want to help people raised on survival come back and get some of that love perspective too. That's part of the goal here. But you have to have support. You can't be afraid and stay on the other side of the fence. You got to let people in. So as a man, you guys have, first access to helping other men with that. So you saying that's actually perfect.
And that's what this is about. It's the Fatherhood
Mhm.
Village. It's about support and supporting young men, supporting young fathers, supporting each other, holding each other accountable, checking ourselves. That's what this is about. We're just trying to build a community of support for one another, because it's just not a lot in there in our community.
That's right. That's right.
Correct.
Hey, this was a fun show, very exciting show. Like I said, we're glad you accepted the invite,
Oh,
and
thanks for having me. This was fun.
absolute pleasure. It was. We'll have to probably do this again if you up for it.
I would love to.
Cool. Okay.
Appreciate you making me look good out here, Jesse.
I think,
Yeah, she
I
put
think
you on, man.
I said I'm gonna tap into my network. Let me see what I can, I can tap into my network. Now I look like a superstar out here. I'm with it.
You make yourself look good. You do a good enough job on that.
I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up our show for this episode. Again, we have descriptions on the resources pertaining to this topic. We'll have those below. Reach us on social media. Just search the Fatherhood Village and email us for other inquiries, thefatherhoodvillage@gmail. All right. So without further ado, I'm Dale Holloway. That's Kev Hick. Peace and love.
Peace and love.